And hi. It is the bottom turnbuckle with the next edition, which we are moving away from the WrestleManias. The first big branch out from WWE or WWF as it was at the time. And it is the Survivor Series, the very, very first one. Gentlemen, how are we and what are we expecting from this event? Jesse.
Survivor Series. I've seen the newer iterations of this. Very curious as to what the very first version looked like. Yeah, I think with every live event so far, they've kind of learned from their mistakes and usually gotten better. So I think it's going to be a pretty good event. I'm excited to watch this.
Tim.
Yeah, also very excited. I love me a Survivor Series. I love a Survivor Series match. Love elimination tag matches. So ready to see what the 80s have in store for us.
Okay, doke. So we will start off with our first match, which was, there was a lot of people in these in the early days. So it's Brutus Beefcake, Jake Roberts, Jim Duggan, Randy Savage, and Ricky Steamboat versus Dangerous Danny Davis, Harley Race, Hercules, the Honky Tonk Man, and Outlaw Ron Bass. It is Team Savage versus Team Politically Incorrect Honky. Let's have a look at it.
You shouldn't let personal things enter into it, Gorilla. Up to the top. Double axe handle nailed him with it. Where's he going? He's out talking to the mouth. He's trying to get it together outside the ring, I think. Talking. He's headed for the exit. I believe you're right. He has no intention of going back.
So that was the first match. It was Team Savage against Team Honky, a big opener. Major stars there, including the at the time current Intercontinental Champion and two previous Intercontinental Champions on the opposite side, Ricky Steamboat with Savage and Honky Tonk Man and King Harley Race, another ex-Intercontinental Champion. It was a big match to open with, given the card as it was. We have the Survivor Series there. We have the boys there. Hercules, Outlaw Ron Bass, who really wasn't that big a deal at the time. And we had Honky Tonk Man, of course, and King Harley Race at 77 million years old. What did we think of that one? Let's go with Jesse with this because it's the very first Survivor Series of all of them and the very first match. What did you think of it?
Yeah, well, so we kind of talked about this right at the beginning when the match was starting, but I'm actually a fan of the fact that they included so many or a bunch of bigger names in the first match. I kind of like the idea of front loading, the event instead of having all the bigger names towards the back end. So I thought that was a pretty good choice. Kept it interesting right off the gate. And just in general, I think any elimination match is going to be a lot of fun chaos to watch. Especially when you get the different matchups or teams, in an event like this. So, yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool. You could tell that Randy Savage was definitely coming in hot against Honky Tonk Man. So every time he'd get in the ring, you'd really see him go to town on Honky Tonk Man. He really had a vendetta against him. That was fun to watch. But just in general, I mean, you saw a lot of cool tag team moves. So interesting. That was who got counted out right at the beginning. There was a double count out. Who was that? That was
Hacksaw Duggan and was it Harley Race?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, that was an interesting moment. I feel like you usually don't see that. The countouts tend to be very slow in events like this, but they definitely tried to keep it varied and interesting. But no, I mean, I think it was a well-placed match. I think it's a good hook to keep you watching for whatever comes after this. And I quite enjoyed it. Although I think it was a little bit underwhelming, the ending where Honky Tonk just runs away in fear from the trio that was beating him up. But I guess I understand. But great match. Enjoyed it thoroughly.
Tim, what did you think?
I liked it. Like I said, I love Survivor Series matches, the elimination matches. There's a lot of, like Jesse said, a lot of good chaos and stuff that comes from them. I thought the match was kind of structured pretty well. A lot of the eliminations didn't really seem that telegraphed, but I also just like the dynamic of the teams were kind of set where you didn't see Honky a lot. even though he was the team captain, it was kind of letting the other guys do most of the work. Meanwhile, Randy Savage was tagging in and out, which was a nice little kind of, subtle thing to show how they differ as captains. The Jim Duggan Harley Race double elimination, didn't see that coming. Not too torn up about it. But besides that, it was a good show, or a good match. Honky just getting destroyed for the last like 5 minutes. And just walking out. Once again, it makes sense for his character and whatever. But overall a good match. Also good to see Danny Davis again, still wearing the rep
still wearing the candy stripes. But I think
it's hilarious.
I think that what wrestler doesn't want to go in his pajamas? He can go straight to bed after. But
well, like you pointed out, once he got eliminated, he just rolled him out of the ring.
Yeah, right.
Maybe there was a mattress off screen and they just carried him off.
It's Betty Boy's time. Just off to get his milk and cookies. But I think on Jesse's point, I actually think it makes sense for Honky Tonk Man to walk out or to run away from it, because he was the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion for a long time. And if I remember correctly, a lot of it was stuff like that, like Weasley stuff, where he held on to the belt by getting himself disqualified or getting himself counted out. So it was very in character for him to run away from the fight in general, because he wasn't the tough guy. He was supposed to be, sly and cunning. And it was, he played that part perfectly well. But overall, in the structure of the match, you think if you're going to eliminate two guys early, Harley Race and Hacksaw Duggan were probably the ones you go for, really, wouldn't it? Maybe Danny Davis, but you actually did quite well.
Yeah, Danny was in there for a while. I was actually kind of surprised at that. I got the times here because I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page. Danny Davis was actually in the third longest among the people who were eliminated. For 15 minutes, he was in the match.
To be fair, he did pull out a secret weapon of headbutting somebody's nuts. So
I was gonna say, I was like,
man, he knows the rep secret. See, that's a thing, because he has the referee experience. He knows how to not get disqualified.
But in terms of if you were booking it, who you would eliminate, or rather have left at the end on the face, so you probably couldn't eliminate any of the three that were left, could you? Because they were both three strong characters at the time.
I think Jesse made a good point of, if you had to, maybe Jake Roberts, because he was kind of in there for a while. You could have,
Well, that was my prediction. I was like, if he gets anybody before he got pinned, or in this case ran out of the ring, it was going to be Jake the Snake, because he took quite the beating before that.
But overall, I think I would agree. Yeah, it was who you were left with was a good choice in this match.
A slight difference in the characters as well. We were talking about like Brutus Beefcake, actually a perfect one. We saw in WrestleMania 3 is very quick conversion to a new career, from strutting yacht surfboard model to barber, just from doing one haircut. And now he's fully into the Brutus the Beefcake character. Hercules is now just the guy in pants with a chain. He doesn't have the Roman, or the Greek rather, garb anymore. And Ricky Steamboat got a haircut, so fashion changes all around there. But what do we think of these progressions to the characters of these people? Good or bad?
I'd say bad mostly. I mean, so Brutus Brutus the Barber Beefcake is he's goofy, but it's more of a character than just like, look at my muscles, I'm hot. It's a weird character, but I mean, Brutus Beefcake, or the Barber Beefcake, is funny, so I'm fine with that. Ricky Steamboat, the haircut wasn't working for me. I don't know. He looked like it kind of looked like a bowl cut, and it just does not look like intimidating to me. And Hercules is just a guy now. I don't know. Those two I didn't really dig that much.
I mean, without the chain, look, for me, his best period comes later when he's in a tag team with Paul Roman at the Power and Glory. Like, that was a very decent tag team. But Ricky Steamboat, he went from WrestleMania 3 in one of the best wrestling matches of all time, looking like a proper champion, a muscle-bound martial arts wrestling, high-flying hero of a man, to somebody who works for a tax company who's just doing this. This is his 10,000 steps. He's just going to be in Survivor Series. What's that tax company with the green?
Geico?
No, they do your taxes for free.
H&R Block.
H&R Block, that's it. He works for H&R Block Monday to Friday, and then Saturday night he does wrestling. But yeah, like Bruce the Beefcake is a weird one because he really looks like he should be a stripper. Like that should be his, from the looks of him, that should be his gimmick. But it's not. His gimmick is a barber, and a barber who apparently has Hulk Hogan's powers of recuperation from the crowd, which I thought was a pathetic. It really was pathetic watching him trying to like feed off the crowd that way.
Just to be somewhat in contrast to what Tim said about Ricky Steamboat. I don't know, like while his haircut may be worse, he just got such a great presence in the ring. I don't know. I think he's extremely fun to watch. He's very nimble and and very very athletic, very quick, sleek fighting style. Yeah, although I also very much agree with the assessment that Hercules is just a guy. He's by far, to me, the most plain wrestler that we saw in that match.
And unfortunately for him, he didn't even have any mic presence in promos and interviews, so he had nothing going for him.
Yeah.
But Ricky Steamboat, yeah, he's grossly underused. I think everybody.
I agree.
In WWF. But probably his own fault because he didn't have a headbutt to the crotch like Danny Davis did. Every wrestler should add that to
That's the key. That's the key.
It's the key. Headbutts to the crotch. But yeah, now overall, what do we think? I think it was a good opening match for like
very solid.
The very first Survivor Series that anybody had ever seen.
I think very solid.
So gets you involved right away. And let's see now if they ruin that with the next match, which is the Divas match, as they would call it now, with the women's wrestling match with Team. I don't know. Team
Fabulous Moolah.
It's Team Moolah, so it's Team Menopause versus
the
Team
Jumping Bomb Angels.
Whoever the hell. So let's go on and have a look at that one.
Odds are against him when you got so many champions. At some point in time, someone's going to lose. Velvet McIntyre in there continues. Another clothesline. Got it linked hook. It's over. The Jumping Bomb Angels win it.
Okay, so women's round, the Team Fabulous Moolah against Team Sherry Martel. As women's matches go, that was pretty fantastic, actually, relative to what you've seen so far in the WrestleManias. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I was actually very taken aback by how, like, we the past 3 women's matches we saw, not the best in terms of in-ring quality, but yeah, they were really going for it this match. All the women really got their time to do, at least one big move, one big spot. I liked the dynamic of having the the 2 women's tag teams as the ones who kind of like are left at the end, because it makes sense because they would be used to tag team wrestling. Also was surprised to learn, I mean, it's kind of unrelated to the match, but was surprised to learn that they even had women's tag champions way back then. I thought that was a relatively new thing for WWE, but just goes to show, I guess, they were trying back then to make a women's division. Whether they were successful, I don't know. That's for the people to decide. But overall, a great match. I really liked the Jumping Bomb Angels were great. Yeah, overall, really good.
Jesse, what did you think of it?
Very, very entertaining match to watch. To echo Jesse Ventura, great intensity throughout this entire match. Especially, I think the star is really where the Jumping Bomb Angels, because they, I as you kind of said during the match, Eric. I mean, they're far and away on a different level, operating on a whole different type of energy than the American wrestlers. I mean, their energy is just go, 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 go. There's no hesitation. There's no, no thought really. It's just action. When they take a hit, they just get back up and keep going. It's like ferocious to watch throughout the entire match, not just Jumping Bomb Angels, but very high energy, high moves. I mean, just nonstop. Really no break in the action throughout this match. Really, really entertaining to watch, I gotta say. I think I definitely agree with what both of you said. By far the best we've seen in terms of an event like this for women's wrestling. Really, really good. Very solid second match here.
So just on like, because I've been critical of the women's matches in the previous in WrestleMania 1, 2, and 3. But just as Tim said, the Jumping Bomb Angels were a level above anything we've seen before. In terms of not just in terms of the quality of the moves, but they had a specific style almost. And not that I know an awful lot about Japanese professional wrestling, but I do know that they have certain like styles, like they have hard style, strong style, and all these kind of subdivisions of wrestling. But their move sets were completely different than anything we've seen so far in women's wrestling or in the women's matches in WWE. Weren't they? Like, just like the way they did drop kicks was different. The way they did top rope moves was different. The way they did clotheslines was different. The way they got out of pins was like that bridge to get out with a pin was one of the like best things I've seen so far in any from men's and women's matches. And then the other one where she did at the early part, she almost slinked her way out of it, out of the pin. I think it was a pin, wasn't it?
I'd have to see.
She kind of gets herself back up, just as
was it like it was kind of like the half bridge sort of thing,
like a half bridge kind of thing? Like it wasn't even time for a one count because she got out of it. It was like really, you would not think of an American women's wrestler doing anything like that. And again, I'm not a huge fan of at least that era of women's wrestling. It was untidy an awful lot of the time, and you could see some of that in this match. But whatever the Jumping Bomb Angels were doing, it really was something that if you were the WWF at the time, you should have been looking at that and saying that's what we need, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think like it's just if they didn't learn from that, then they were fools because it was really exciting to watch. And just to go back to what Tim said, as far as I remember, I think it dies out after that for a long, long time. I think like the next few events have 0 women's matches in them at all.
Wow. That's kind of shocking. I mean, again, this is a fantastic match. I mean, really building off of the energy of the previous one. I mean, there really was, again, everybody who participated really contributed to the match in their own way. I can't think of a wrestler that really brought anything down. I think they all added to
even Moolah.
Even
absolutely Moolah did, for sure.
I think it seemed
great moments.
It seemed like they were smart to minimize her time in the ring, but when she was in it, she did pretty much probably the best job she's done that we've seen so far, right?
I'd agree.
Yeah, I can get behind that for sure. Yeah.
The one thing I will say, and we mentioned it during the match, that I feel is kind of criticism. There were a lot of repeated moves where I saw, I think, 4 slingshots and maybe 3 or 4. What's the move with the double arms where it's like a fisherman suplex?
It's like a power bomb almost or something like.
Yeah. I think it's a fisherman suplex. That one. I think that was done a couple times. Maybe once again they had, how long was this match? Like 20 something minutes.
Something minutes, yeah.
Yeah, 22 minutes. That's including entrances, so maybe like 21 minutes or so. They had a lot of time to fill, probably more time to fill than they've ever had individually as people. So they probably had to, work on some stuff. And obviously they're all being trained by Moolah outside of the Jumping Bomb Angels. So it would make sense that a lot of their move sets are kind of the same.
Yeah.
But that's my only real criticism, I guess, of this match. Very minor.
I think though, like having said that, if the Jumping Bomb Angels weren't in it, it's probably a terrible match. I think they kind of made everybody else raise the bar on what they were doing because they were just so good at being not just women wrestlers but a tag team as well. Like it was almost like listening to like Guns N' Roses and Def Leppard and all that in the late 80s into the early 90s, and then Nirvana comes along. and it's just something complete. It's the same, but it's completely different, and that's kind of what I felt with the Jumping Bomb Angels way back then when I was a kid watching it. Brought to the WWE. I don't think they lasted very long. I think it was more like they were just there from New Japan for a while. But like it was just such a you kind of just wish all the women's matches were like they were. You think,
Yeah, and it would take a very long time for it to really get to that standard. I was actually surprised that you said there's not even women matches on the next couple of shows.
I don't think there's any. I think it dies out like for a long like there's no women's matches at all in SummerSlams in WrestleMania 4. I think I could be wrong about that, but definitely 5 and 6. 7, I don't think there was any. It really like it didn't catch on, so they just didn't focus on it for a long time.
I will say, like, despite the match being pretty good, the crowd did seem a little quiet for a lot of it.
No.
Yeah, I agree.
So maybe that was kind of the thing.
Not a lot of cheering.
Yeah, I mean, like toward the end, when the when the Bomb Angels were doing their moves, they got back into it. But I felt like toward the middle, I think especially when Sherry was in, it felt really kind of like muted the crowd. Once again, maybe they're just not used to. Yeah, like it wasn't really catching on, like you said. So that could have been part of it.
It's possible that like they just thought Moolah was somebody's grandmother and they were worried for her.
Dude, she looked so much like
she looked way older than any other wrestler in that ring for sure.
Yeah, but even like no part of her when you see her, you're like, oh, that she's a wrestler, Like the other ones, like they may not be the most like muscular or whatever, but at least they kind of look like they should be there. Moolah literally does look like a senior citizen from the crowd came in and was like, I can do this.
Leotard and just
well in the leotard she looks like she was going to like the Jane Fonda calisthenics class. She went into the wrong corridor and ended up in wherever the arena was for Survivor Series 87.
She was like, I need to get my cardio somehow. I guess I'm doing this.
Yeah. But overall, a decent match in absolute terms, but compared to anything we've seen before from the women's, probably the best women's match we've seen so far. Yep,
I'd agree.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so that's the women's division out of the way. What we have next is the 750,000 man tag team Survivor Series match. I think it's 20 man. There's a lot of wrestlers in this one.
That's still ridiculous.
I'm sorry. It's probably they probably just should have had a battle royal for this one, but we're gonna go into that. But before that, we'll have a quick break and then the weird world of wrestling for Jesse yet again.